Dear students, let us begin with the third part of the lesson on India and WTO, in which we will discuss about India and GATS, India and TRIPS and the Doha round. Let us discuss about India's role in GATS. Under the General Agreement on Trade in Services, India's approach was highly conservative. It scheduled only a few services for negotiations and did not table important services such as energy and distribution services, where there is great interest on the part of developed countries to enter the Indian market. The revised offers made by India in January 2004 as part of the ongoing GATS negotiations are not substantively different and remain subject to numerous restrictions. Today, the wedge between India's GATS commitments and existing policies is even greater, given the considerable autonomous liberalization undertaken in the 1990s in many of India's service sectors. India aims to secure increased market access for the temporary movement of its service providers and was earlier influential in developing the GATS annex on this mode of supply. It has been pushing for secure market access for the cross-border supply of services, a mode that covers trade in services through business process outsourcing, which is of growing interest to India. Let us discuss about India's role in TRIPS. The issue of intellectual property rights and the resulting agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights aroused much debate in India. The agreement had no major implications for India in the area of copyrights, trademarks and designs. As domestic legislation in the latter areas was already in conformity with the TRIPS agreement, India had several concerns in the area of patents. The foremost concern was about the likely impact of amendments in domestic patent legislation due to the TRIPS agreement on the Indian pharmaceutical sector and on public health and equity objectives. It was feared that the introduction of product patents for pharmaceuticals would lead to higher drug prices and benefit developed country pharmaceutical firms at the expense of domestic generic drug manufacturers in developing countries. A second concern was that patent protection to plant varieties and microorganisms under the TRIPS agreement would lead to biopiracy and ecological wealth of developing countries like India and a monopoly over seed and fertilizer trade and production by Western multinationals. The fear was that such production would ultimately raise input prices for developing countries' agricultural producers and would limit their ability to indigenize to suit local conditions. It could also potentially have adverse environmental effects. India has taken steps to conform its domestic legislation with the TRIPS agreement. India's Patents Act of 1970 has undergone 3 amendments. The main changes include the extension of patent protection to a period of 20 years for all inventions, clarification of what constitutes the working of patents, the specification of a list of non-patentable innovations including seeds, plants, species, traditional knowledge and other items for which innovations may not classify as inventions. Conditions for the grant of compulsory license including on the grounds of national and public health emergencies. Introduction of product patents. India has also introduced the Protection of Plant Variety and Farmers' Right Act as a system for protecting plant and animal life. However, the basic concerns and debates over the TRIPS agreement continue to shape India's position on this agreement in the post-Uruguay round discussions. Let us discuss about Doha round. Doha Round is also known as the Doha Development Agenda, which was a set of negotiations conducted under the World Trade Organization that began in November 2001 in Doha, Qatar. The inception of the Doha Round placed a significant emphasis on alleviating the development challenges faced by developing countries. It sought to harness international trade as a catalyst for stimulating economic growth and diminishing poverty within these nations. India, as a representative of the developing world, has consistently stressed the significance of special and differential treatment provisions within the WTO. Its position revolves around the idea that developing countries should be granted preferential terms and increased flexibility in the execution of trade agreements, with the goal of addressing their specific development imperatives effectively. The Doha Round encountered a multitude of hurdles and was deadlocked over an extended period due to discord between developed and developing nations on a range of matters. Impasses in negotiations endured for an extended duration. Growing impatient with the protracted pace of advancement in the Doha Round, several nations including India embarked on the pursuit of bilateral and regional trade agreements as viable alternatives. Let us summarize what we have discussed so far in this lesson. India was expected to be among the main developing countries beneficiaries of the Uruguay Round Agreement, mainly due to the elimination of non-tariff barriers. The coverage ratio for non-tariff barriers on Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development countries imports from India was estimated to decline from 29.4% to 5.1% across all products. The bulk of this reduction was due to improved market access in textiles and clothing and agriculture following the phasing out of the multi-fiber agreement by 2005 and the elimination of non-tariff barriers in agriculture. Quantitative exercises indicated an increase in exports of 3% of the value of India's 1992 exports due to the liberalization of agricultural trade and of 7.4% due to the elimination of the MFA. In the area of services, the gains were limited given the lack of substantive commitments by all countries in India's main area of export interest, namely the movement of service suppliers. Any gains were, however, finally contingent on the implementation of commitments by developed countries. It also depended on India's ability to capitalize on improved market access opportunities by introducing domestic structural and policy reforms to remove supply side constraints and compete more effectively in world trade. I hope you understood India's role in WTO. We have concluded our lesson. Thank you.